Welcome to today's Tele-Seminar. I might ask if you could hear me to give me a thumbs up, possibly so with some of the people I can see on the screen. Just want to make sure we're coming through clearly to you. Okay, thank you. So as I said, welcome to today's Tele-Seminar. This is our first Tele-Seminar in a series of 6, sponsored by the E3 Marketing Group. Purpose of the E3 Marketing Group is to help people think differently about their money. And when we talk about that, what we mean specifically is to help people discover the flow of their money. My name is Tom Wickler. I'm your facilitator for today's Tele-Seminar. I'll be joined today by John Moriarty, who is the founder of E3 Consultants Group, and Mark Benson, the founder of Maritime. These are our leaders in the E3 marketing effort. Again, this is the first of 6 teleseminars that will lead up to a live event in November in St. Louis. The dates being November 15th, 16th, and 17th. This will be our 3rd event. And today what we'd like to do is to recap the evolution that we've experienced in working to bring the best information that we can to the entrepreneurial-minded advisor, who then can ideally help create more value for their clients. So my role, along with being a facilitator, is to work with the group in terms of the people skills, so to speak. And we recognize that people have typically 2 challenging relationships in their life that often can create challenges that they might at times need some outside help with. The relationship with money and the relationship with themselves. And sometimes when those converge, you can use some outside guidance. And we've got 2 guys joining us today who've had a lot of experience in helping guide people through the difficult journey of knowing the best way to control their money. So I'll stop talking at this point in time. I'm going to bring on John Moriarty with me, and then I'll introduce Mark Benson. Again, John is the founder of E3 Consultants Group, and currently E3 Consultants Group oversees $500 million in assets. So obviously that's a pretty solid effort here. We're looking to hear from John as far as some of the things that have led to his success, but also his vision, his experience with the E3 Marketing Group as we look to transform an industry by helping people think differently about their money. John, good morning and welcome to today's Tele-Seminar.
Thanks, Tom. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in or joining us via webcam. This is the first attempt at this new technology. So if you hear some background noise or you see us making funny faces, that's just because we're getting used to the technology. So bear with us. We're going to get better with it. Way I want to start off my part is just to give everybody a quick background introduction. I got into this business 21 years ago. I was a junior in college. I started with an internship. I played college baseball, knew I wasn't going to get drafted and play professional baseball, so I thought I might need a real job. Luckily, I was able to find an internship with a financial services firm that was doing what I would call more of integrating financial services, looking at investments, insurance, tax strategies. That's actually where I met Mark Benson as part of that group as one of the leaders. Got into the business. I was 21 years old. I didn't know anyone that would honestly trust me with their life savings. Probably because they had a good head on their shoulders, and most people who have life savings aren't going to trust a 21-year-old with those. So I got into this business at a point where I needed help figuring out a way to survive in this business and then find some mentorship where I could thrive in that business. And that's actually where I met Mark, started working with them. I'll let him kind of tell his version of the story. But essentially, we worked together for a number of years. In 2003, I started E3 Consultants Group with the mindset of us just creating a company that would focus on more of a comprehensive wealth management solution. Our E3 Wealth model then expanded into E3 Tax. We started a tax firm in 2012 by strategically acquiring other tax practices. And then that has evolved into what we're doing now with E3 marketing, which is more of educating the public, advisors on ways to think differently about money, doing that through radio shows, books, workshops, seminars, and then obviously our Freedom Advisor Crusade. So my evolution has really become one where I got into this business as a financial advisor, and now I look at myself as an entrepreneur in the financial services industry. And the reason I'm letting you know this is when we talk a little bit in the next 5-10 minutes about Freedom Advisor Crusade, my whole journey over my 21 years was always about getting to that next level, but figuring out how I was going to accomplish that. And what I started to figure out over time was I was never going to be able to get to that next level by myself, whether it was through my own action versus the action of the team, whether it's with my own mindset versus the mindset of a team or a community, or if it was through my own personal actions or the actions of other entrepreneurial financial professionals I surround myself with. So that's enough about me. Time to turn it over to Mark.
Yes.
Okay.
Mark, you can give us a quick insight into your background, what's brought you to this point with E3 marketing.
Sure. So, Tom, I was a high school math teacher and football coach for 12 years. And in 1985, I was introduced to the Franklin Life Insurance Company. And I worked with that company on a dual career basis, basically working with former players and students in areas that had to do with investments, insurance, tax strategies, et cetera. When in 88, I made a career change to doing that on a full-time basis and did it really well. Things went great. Saw my revenue increase over the next 7-8 years, and it kind of hit a plateau. It would bounce up and down, but not really. It kind of stopped.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize it, but I read a book by Dan Sullivan, The Great Crossover, and in the first few pages of the book, Dan was basically, I felt like he was talking to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I had reached a ceiling of complexity, and just as John was talking about, we both realized that it's impossible to do anything great by yourself. You have to work within a teamwork setting. And so in the mid to late 90s, I started attending Strategic Coach. And while at Strategic Coach, that's where I did one thinking exercise. That's where we came up with the idea to focus on teachers in the state of Missouri as one of our focus markets.
Mm-hmm.
Also at that time, thanks to a Gamma Foundation study, we began to understand that basically the industry was flat for a number of reasons, but one was that there were rugged individuals who were trying to do everything. And so we, one of the suggestions, one of the best practices suggested was that we unbundle the process. And so it was about that same time that John and I hooked up. And John was probably the first guy that played a role with me as, today we call that a coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
Probably did a little more than that. But the biggest thing that John figured out very early on is that if he would create value for me, I would do the same for him, and we would both do the same for our clients. And Dan Sullivan, a Strategic Coach, he defines creating value as enhancing somebody's capabilities, increasing their confidence, also helping them with their relationships, creativity, just bringing clarity to people's lives. And so I think John and I were the first pioneers in our organization of trying to do it. And so we at that time we had this idea. Third thing that happened is there's a Stanford research study that said that the American people would like to be able to go to one place and know that they can get all of the answers that they're looking for financially. And so we built what we call still today an integrated network of financial people, from tax people to investment people to insurance to state attorneys, cash flow specialists, social security specialists, and so on. And it's almost like a faculty of financial people that are at the disposal of each of our clients. They can pick and choose and use part of our network, or they can use all of our network. So things went well for the next few years. But then another real game changer for us, it was in 2009. We were introduced to the book by Nelson Nash, Become Your Own Banker. And I think one thing that did for me personally is I realized that in the financial industry, probably most financial people are focused on the 5 or 10% of the revenue or the income that a client has, and they kind of don't think about the other 90%. And so as we began to work with people, we started to understand the importance of looking at all of the dollars. And over time, John and myself and our organization, we feel like we've been able to implement some thinking exercises where we help people figure out where their money's flowing. We help them figure out what money's flowing into their control, what money's flowing out of their control. We then help them strategize some more flows into their control. Tom, the end result is that those clients have more money to retain and utilize for the rest of their lives. And they're beginning to understand that they're going to pass more to the next generations. So along the way, John, myself, and our organization, I think we came to the realization that financial people, including us, can do more to help people than what we're doing. And so we just feel like that if we can help build a growing community of financial professionals who will work in a cooperative manner, that we can really create some value, not only for our clients, but for each other. And to me, that's one of the big components of the Freedom Advisor Educational Crusade, and that's really what this is all about.
I'll come back to John. John, when we're talking about helping people think differently, can you give us some more of your views as to just exactly what that means? And I know that Mark has started to segue into that a little bit when he talks about helping people understand the flow of their money. Why is it important for the average person to become more aware of this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Tom, the way, and for everybody that's listening, I think we would all agree that the current economic environment that we're living in is very different than the past 20, 30 years. Would everybody agree with that? With a nodding of your heads if you're on the video cams. And I'm just going to assume everybody that's calling in, you're also nodding. So I like that assumption. So obviously everybody has made economic decisions up to this point based on their past experiences. Okay. So their past experiences have been lived or experienced in an environment where different things were happening from an interest rate standpoint. Different things were happening from an accumulation perspective, with putting money into the stock market or putting money into safer investments like bonds or putting money in the bank. So everybody's basing future decisions in the present on past experiences that we know fundamentally, mathematically, cannot be the same going forward. So in the investment industry, there's the disclaimer that everybody always says, past performance is no indication of future results, right? That's what we're supposed to live by, but yet what do most investment people do? When you're talking to a client about investment decision, most of the time what you're going to do is you're going to show them information about a recommendation, and you're going to base the validity of that recommendation on past performance. So you're going to say, hey, why would I recommend you do this with your money for the next 10, 20, 30 years? Well, because Mr. Prospect or Mrs. Prospect, over the last 10, 20, 30 years, here's how it's performed. And we feel like if it's performed that well in the past, why would it work well in the future? Well, because we know that can't happen. The biggest thing that we're focused on right now, Tom kind of alluded to it, is this idea of helping people think differently about their money. And what we mean by that is, Mark alluded to this, but I really want to make sure we highlight it. It's all about the control of where people's money is flowing. right? So the more money you get flowing into your control, the less money you get flowing out of your control. That's important. But also, it's about what is your money? How is your money working? Are you generating internal returns? Are you generating external returns? Are you looking at minimizing risk versus taking more risk? Are you looking at ways to save money versus investing money? These are all things that we may talk about with our clients in almost just a happenstance way. We kind of throw these words out, but we don't really define them in a way that clients understand. No, there's a very big difference between saving and investing. There's a very big difference between how you generate returns in a portfolio. So the big thing, Tom, that we've kind of focused on is, can we create a language that helps people think differently about their money? Now, in our mind, what we're trying to do is help people figure out ways that they can think, communicate, and behave so that they can control more of their money. Well, that's really a big piece of what the Freedom Advisor Crusade is all about. And it's one of the things we focus on at our different events and in different conversations we have with advisors. It's not about us helping advisors do things our way. It's about helping everybody create, a community that sees things in the same way. And ultimately, if we can look at transformational type conversations where all of a sudden advisors are going into conversations with their clients and they're building confidence, not just in the client, but also in their minds. I can really help my client. I can really help them achieve their goals, but I can also educate them in ways that they start realizing things that they're hearing on TV or seeing in the newspaper or experiencing when they're talking to other people. That really doesn't apply to them because the only thing that really matters is what's going on in their personal or business. So it's a paradigm shift, but in our minds, it's not one that's impossible. It's just something that has to start with some foundational conversations and some foundational learning that we think as a community we can make happen.
I'm going to bring Mark into the conversation here in a second, but John, my background is as a professional counselor, not as a financial advisor, but what I am hearing you say and what I've learned from you is that really you're challenging the status quo of Jack public, that my thinking would be that if I save money, kept my money in the bank, listen to an advisor as far as maybe a blend of conservative investment, but also maybe taking a little bit of risk in some areas, that would be the typical path, I think, for a lot of people. At least this is my thinking. Mm-hmm. So again, what's really come through to me is you're challenging the status quo. Mark, can you talk a little bit more about why it's important? What a person such as myself has been really kind of led to believe in terms of controlling their money and why it doesn't get challenged and why it's important from your perspective.
Sure. So, Tom, John and I and Jenny, Bruce, Robbie, 5 of us make up E3 Marketing. We were sitting around a couple years ago and thinking, we've been on some 40,000 plus meetings with people. And during the course of those conversations, some of our observations, one huge observation is that probably the industry, the media is nurturing more of a mindset of scarcity. And the reason that that's kind of becoming obvious is that when we look at, and I would challenge anybody listening in today to begin helping their clients analyze and think through, when you look at a client's gross income, normally 35, 40, 45, as much as 50% of that money before it ever hits the client checking account to utilize is flowing to the government, or it's in taxes, or it's flowing to government-created tax shelters, which we're supposed to think are going to solve the high taxes. Mm-hmm. And as Nelson Nash talks about, does it make any sense that the government which creates the horrific taxes is then going to provide us with solutions to solve the horrific tax problem? That's illogical.
Mm-hmm.
So 35, 45, 50% of an individual family's revenue is flowing to government and government-created tax shelters. Then we take it a step further and we start to analyze what percent of the money flowing into the checking account is then, where's it going? And Tom, we're seeing that 35, 45, 50% of those dollars are flowing to commercial banks. And so it's no wonder that people are having a mindset of scarcity, because all of their money, way too much of their money, is flowing out of their control. So we do a simple thinking exercise for people where we say, okay, let's figure out what percent of your gross revenue is flowing to the government-created tax shelters. That's, as I said, 40, 50%.
Mm-hmm.
What percent of the remaining dollars is flowing to the commercial banks? That too is 35, 45, 50%. What percent of your money is flowing into a position that you have control of? That's zero. Now, something that, again, we picked up because of our learning Nelson Nash was that people who, as opposed to, there's an alternative place to store money at the banks. We take money to the bank to save, to borrow. Well, what we've been working with our clients on is the idea that what if we could reduce what's going to the government? What if we could reduce what's going to the commercial banks, and we could get some of that money to flow to your own privatized banking system where you have control? So that's been one of my biggest takeaways the last several years in dealing with thousands of people, is to just help them gain more control of their financial picture.
Okay, so when you're referencing Nelson Nash and the Nelson Nash Institute, what you're doing is you're also bringing into the picture our partner in this effort. And one of our resources, or again, you talked about that integrated resource network that you came to see is so valuable. So we want to talk about that here shortly, because I know that we're fortunate enough to have Kim Butler and Todd Langford join us last week with Truth Concepts and shed more light into the importance and the utility of becoming your own.
Yeah, that's right. So Tom, if you go back to what was stated earlier about Dan Sullivan's comment about value creation, again, that's enhancing people's capabilities, increasing their confidence, and so on. Well, what John and Bruce, Robbie, Jenny, myself, what we've also been thinking through is this idea that, okay, let's begin a network, or let's begin developing a network of resources that can create value for any of those financial professionals who want to join the Freedom Advisor Educational Crusade. So you've already mentioned the Nelson Nash Institute is one organization that's on board with us. Another organizations that are on board, Todd Langford with Truth Concepts. And the thing that caught our attention regarding Todd is he made a comment that 30 plus years ago, when he would be talking to a client, would be times when he just knew what the client was saying they were going to do didn't make sense, but he couldn't prove it. So he spent a big part of his working life building software capabilities that will help people look at the entire truth. And so we're ecstatic that Truth Concepts, they will be at our November event. Todd will be there. He's going to be available in several capacities. Then Todd's wife, Kim Butler, who is the author of a number of books, and I'm sure many of our audience have read. She's a coach at Strategic Coach, and she is working with the concept of prosperity economics. And that movement, we feel like, is very much in sync with the Freedom Advisor movement. So both of those individuals will be at our event in November.
Okay, John, I'm going to come back to you and ask you to talk a little bit more in detail as to why an advisor should consider joining this crusade. I think that we have had some insight shed on that right now. But again, if you're someone out there listening right now, and we'll talk about the events, we'll in a few minutes take a look back at our evolution, what we started with, and last year, our second event, and then leading to our third event. But why would an advisor join this Freedom Advisor Educational Crusade?
Tom, that's a great question, and I would kind of, you're welcome. I would kind of put the answer into three categories, just depending on the different folks that are listening in. I'm trying to kind of tailor the reasoning to your situation. I would kind of look at advisors being in kind of three different categories. The first being someone that is relatively new to this industry, and someone that's hungry, that wants to succeed, but is having difficulty for various reasons. Maybe those reasons are you're having trouble finding people to see. Maybe it's because you're operating as a kind of a rugged individualist. You're by yourself, and so you don't know what you don't know. You're having successes, but then you're having failures in your mind. And you continue to feel a tug of war between the amount of time you spend in certain areas and the results that you try to create. So for whatever reason, you can't get over the proverbial hump. So that type of advisor, we would essentially be looking to figure out a path, a way in which you can get to your next level and get from surviving to hopefully thriving, okay? The second type of advisor would be the advisor that is at a point where they feel, I don't want to use sometimes people use the term comfortable, or they say, well, you're successful. Yeah, you've had some success. And a lot of that is just based on you've built your business to a point where you're very happy with what it's creating. But what you also know is there's a lot of opportunity out there to grow, but you're not really sure how to maybe deploy the resources of time, talent, or capital. But also that same advisor, and that could be an advisor that's been in the business 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It's not a matter of time in the business. It's really getting to a relative level of success. So number one, you're trying to figure out how to use time, talent, and capital. But the other thing is you're really struggling with the changes that are occurring in the industry. And if you think about the Department of Labor, if you think about, what's going to happen from a legislative perspective, what's going to happen after November with the elections, what's going on with the economy, what a lot of things we're hearing from people are that this business is becoming much more complicated. And it's getting to a point where a lot of advisors, where they've kind of created that level of success or comfort, that's starting to erode, not because of any fault of their own, just because the complexity of the business, okay? And what we see with that type of advisor is there needs to be a paradigm shift, partly out of necessity, right? Because there's going to be some big change that's going to be coming our way, whether we like it or not. And some people might not be ready for that change. And some people may be ready for it, but they're not exactly sure how to take action. Okay, so for that advisor, what our crusade is looking to do is create some clarity. Okay, just say, look, here are some things that we believe are going to be beneficial to you. It doesn't mean you're not going to have to change, right? And we know change is never easy. But we also believe that if you're willing to change and willing to be a part of a community that's going to embrace that change, that you're going to have a higher level of potential for success, okay? Then the third type of advisor that we would look at is the advisor that has continued to evolve their business. They've continued to grow. They've created success. And some people measure that success by assets under management. Some people measure it by revenue. Some people measure it just by quality of life. But the bottom line is, we know that there are several advisors out there who are achieving that level of success, and they see more opportunity. They see the ability to continue to create, add value, do what Mark said, from a value creation standpoint. But what they're also realizing is they cannot do it by themselves. And that's where I personally believe we are as a group right now. We believe that we've achieved a certain level of success. We're very competent and excited about our success, but we don't believe it's enough. We believe that to do more, number one, in order for us as an industry to do more, we have to stop looking at other advisors, all these other people that are tuning in via video or on through their cell phones. We got to stop looking at them as competition. We have to look at them as cooperating, members of a community. We got to start looking, and instead of looking at one another as competition, or looking at the banks as competition, or the Merrill Lynches of the world, or whatever else. There is no competition if you're focused on value creation. But at the same time, too, that cannot occur unless you have a lot of confidence in your business model. You have a lot of ways to implement strategies and make sure you can deliver on those promises for clients. So that's really what I see as our Freedom Advisor community. It's helping those different advisors at those 3 different levels, but doing it in a way where, as Mark said before, it's abundant. The idea of that scarcity mindset, we have to get away from that. That is what is eroding our society. It's eroding our culture. And it pollutes what people think. It pollutes the way in which people think about making decisions. And when it comes to financial decisions, that's the one area where you don't want people having a scarcity mindset, because it not only affects them, but it actually can affect future generations, as you've seen.
Thanks, Dan. I want to just send a message to our listeners. If you have a question, you can raise your hand, and Drew, sitting to my left, will unmute you, or you can write it on the message board on your computer as well, too. John, you mentioned a really important word, I think, when you talk about mindset and the willingness to be open to change, the willingness to recognize that it's really difficult to do this on your own. And I think you gave some insight into the depth of the resource that this movement can provide for the typical advisor. And I want to ask Mark in a second if he'll talk a little bit more about mindset, but you also did allude to the mindset shift that needed to occur here within this group in terms of moving from competition, if that's the right word, to collaboration, to cooperation, which is really a hallmark of an abundant mindset. It's getting away from the fear that I have to keep it all to myself, that I can join an effort here where I can get an awful lot of answers. But again, it takes that like-mindedness, I think, and I think that's what we're finding in the partners that we're connecting with in the Integrated Resource Network. But Mark, other thoughts that you have as far as mindset and what we're looking for as far as asking, when we say asking an advisor to think differently or help their clients think differently, what else would you add?
Well, just to build on the scarcity versus abundance mindset, Tom, when I started in this industry, what I was basically taught by, a financial institution was to preach the idea of accumulation. Mm-hmm. And there was never really a lot of discussion about utilization of the money. Mm-hmm. And so if you think through people who really get into the accumulation piece, a lot of times once they get 100,000 accumulated, they want to get to 2. They get to $1 million, they want to get to $1.5 million, et cetera. And they don't really think through utilizing the money. And so one of the big things that we really try to help people think through with some of our thinking exercises is this idea that accumulation is important, but accumulation and utilization is also important. And as I think John mentioned a few minutes ago, there are certainly ways for people to accumulate money in a way that it continues to work for you. And I think we're going to get into this in future teleseminars, but the ability to have uninterrupted, tax-free, compound growth on money, and at the same time be able to access that money for opportunities and for the things that happen in life, that's a really important concept for people to understand. And we don't feel like that's really being taught very well. Mm-hmm. Another area that really resonates with me is that a lot of times the financial institutions talk about budget. Well, budget helps you figure out what you can't get. We spend a lot of time with cash flow awareness thinking exercises, and that's a way to help our clients figure out how to get what they want. And then yet another abundance versus scarcity mindset is we're dealing, and I believe we're going to have a teleseminar on this also, just about generational conversations. And I know, Tom, you're doing a lot of work in that area, but we really feel like the generational conversation thinking exercises, we think that's a huge game changer. Anyone attending in November, if they just attend that session, the event will be well worth it to them. And so we've just noticed that a lot of folks will do the necessary work as far as the estate planning, the wills, the trust, etc. But help me with the author, Tom.
James Hughes.
Yeah, James Hughes, the author, attorney, who's made it his life work to study this concept of rags to rags. Right. And so with that concept, what's missing is there's not generational conversations going on. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing that I know you personally are going to be talking about with some of our folks at the event. And that's a huge thing. So all of those are just simply mindsets that have been nurtured, I think, by us financial professionals in the area, nurturing scarcity. And we feel like that with some of our thinking exercises, we're going to flip the switch on that and help people think in a more abundance mindset.
Mark, you mentioned future teleseminars. I'm going to ask Jenny Dasher to come on with us in a couple minutes and review some of those topics so people have an insight as to what else they'll have the opportunity to learn if they stay with us and continue to listen. Let's talk about the November event, but before we actually do that, let's also talk about where we've been in terms of the events. Our first one took place in November 2015. And at that time, my experience at least was that we spent a lot of time talking about the 5-step process that we documented in terms of what's brought about the success of both the E3 Consultant Group and Maritime. Again, Mark, you mentioned 44,000 need-to-need meetings, and Maritime's never had to advertise. John's organization has over $500 million in assets under control, or overseeing $500 million in assets. So again, this is some solid performance. In that first event, I think one of the things that we talked about, and again, these will be things that an advisor will learn, be exposed to in November. So I think right now, going to the question of why come to this event, we talked about why become a Freedom Educational Crusade advisor, why that's important, but why come to the event? In that first effort, we talked so much about the importance of being able to have people to see, have enough people to see, attracting quality clients. That was one of the highlights, I think, of that first event. I think in our second event, again, from my experience, was more of an emphasis on cash flow, on financial discovery, taking that larger picture, bringing forward the Nelson Nash Institute and the importance of understanding what it means to become your own banker. So I want to give some insight as to what an advisor will experience here in November. But Mark, I am going to stick with you just for a second and ask you to spend a moment into talking about, attracting that client or attracting more clients to see.
Sure. So Tom, there are studies that tell us that a significant percentage of the people that get into our industry fail. So if you just think through that, any industry where the failure rate is 80, 90%, that's a problem. That makes orphans out of clients. And one of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest, that people fail is they don't have enough of the right kinds of people to see on a consistent basis. So one thing that we feel like that we've been able to experience over the last couple decades is we've built a system to where we have our natural or focused markets, they contact us. And that's what we call our client attraction process. And so that's one thing that will be taught, only we're going to take it several layers deeper this time. And one thing I would say is that when we did our first event a year ago, we set a date, we burned the bridges, and we thought, hey, we don't know if we're ready to do this event, but we're going to go do it because we got to start somewhere. And we've had people say, yeah, it was good. It was great information. Well, I really feel like that the next event we did in May was 10 times better than the first one. And I'm pretty confident that the next one's going to be 10 times better. The one we do in November will be 10 times better than the one we did in May. And one of the reasons is that because of our experiences, we're going to go much deeper into different concepts, one being the client attraction process. And I would just ask the audience or any financial person, if you had a steady flow of the kinds of people that you wanted to talk to, if you had a steady flow contacting you, what would that do to your business? What would that do to, just your attitude? And we're very confident that we know how to do that. We've done it. And now we're ready to share that with as many people as possible going forward. That's just a huge, that's a significant thing that has a significant fundamental that needs to be brought to the industry. Right now, there's too many. I see two things. There's too many financial people who they come in, they just don't know how to get in front of people. Okay. The second challenge is I don't know if there's really a solid training program that exists anywhere around the country that will do all these different steps. And so we're obviously really excited about it. They keep getting better. The folks that have attended the events, they've brought some significant insight into making it better. So this is a movement that's going to just keep, building up steam. And so we're excited about as many people as possible joining us.
I'm going to turn to Jenny Dasher here in a second and ask you to give us some insight into the topics for future teleseminars, because these will be also topics and things that we'll review or get into much greater depth over in November. Jenny, can you take it from here for a minute?
I can. Thanks, Tom. Hi, everyone. Hopefully some of you guys are new. I see some familiar faces out there. But what we're hoping to do this series before our next event is we're going to review some of the stuff a little bit deeper that we have the last two go-arounds. But we also have a few new topics that, as we've pioneered over the past year and a half just with this crusade that we're on, there's a few pieces that we're going to tie into the mix of everything. One of them being the mindset scorecard, and the guys have talked a little bit about that. And for those of you that know us, and maybe those of you that are new to us today, you may be picking up on just kind of the way we think and the way you think we might interact with people. And so we want to have the opportunity to gain from you also. So we want to talk on the next teleseminar. We're going to really focus on the mindset, and maybe we are a group of professionals that you think you would like to work with. But we also believe that it's important that we have similar mindsets. So we're going to talk a little bit about that next week, and that'll carry on probably informally through the rest of the teleseminars through the event. then the next teleseminar after that, we're going to talk about, with that mastermind, what is that group of people like? Who are the best kind of people that we can all get together to continue to move forward with this crusade? And then we'll have a couple more. One is about the high quality client attraction process. Those of you who know us, you know that we have a lot to share there, and we're going to go even a little bit deeper than at the event. And then on the last, we're going to the two last teleseminars, and again, we'll send this out to you, and on our website, there's dates of all these. But generational planning, Tom Mickler and Robbie Shilley, and a guest, Brian Scribonia, who's been working with us. They're going to talk about generational planning and how that can be such a game changer in your practice. And then the last one, right before the event, we're going to talk about Bruce Weiner. A lot of you guys know Bruce. He's going to come in, and he and Tom Mickler are going to talk about using empathy with your clients. So it's some different stuff, some of the same stuff. Hopefully we can share with you guys everything that you're looking for. So Tom, is that kind of?
Yes, thanks, Jenny.
Right.
Appreciate the summary. One thing I want to make sure that we do today is that we are clear when we're talking about a financial discovery process, what that really means. Are we talking about one particular way to do that? So I'm going to ask John and Mark in a second to both weigh in on what the financial discovery process entails. But I'd also want to make another comment here too. Mark, you alluded to your experience in coming across Nelson Nash's book, and I think you've been clearly inspired by the energy of the NNI in building a 10% to transform this industry. So John mentioned earlier, a shift in our mindset here, moving towards greater cooperation with other financial professionals. And I think in the larger scheme of things, the recognition that advisors can do so much more to help people, and that the current economic climate and the current monetary policy is really going to make things challenging for people in the future, in a recognition of the need to transform an industry. You might be an advisor that, I don't know what that might mean to you. It might mean all kinds of different things to you when we talk about transforming the industry. But you can play a role in that directly, indirectly, when we're talking about that financial discovery process, because again, it's helping put the client in more control of the flow of their own money. But John, I'm going to ask you first if you would talk about what the financial discovery process means to you, and is that a one-trick show, or what exactly are we talking about?
Tom, when we're talking about financial discovery, we're essentially helping advisors understand that in order to bring value to your client, you have to understand their entire financial picture. So and this is something where it's not just about gathering account statements or, getting a ledger of assets and liabilities and kind of asking a couple questions about their cash flow needs and, retirement age. It's going in depth into their cash flow, getting an understanding of their income tax situation, both today and in the future, understanding where their portfolio is from a risk perspective, understanding where their portfolio is from a tax diversification perspective, looking at ways to understand what the purpose of their money is. And ultimately, and I know Mark will kind of talk about this a little bit, it's really understanding where their money is flowing. How much money is flowing in their control, how much money is flowing out of their control, how much money is residing in places where they have access to it, how much money is residing in places where it's quote unquote in prison. So it's all of these different things, but then it's also the comprehensive way in which you communicate with the client. You ask questions and you understand really what the purpose of their money is, really what they're trying to accomplish, and then doing things in a way where you're educating them to build confidence. You're hoping that confidence allows them to move towards implementing strategies that they take action, and ultimately doing it in a way where you're building trust with that client, but you're earning that trust. And you're also continuing to maintain that trust by managing those clients' expectations. So this isn't just about making quote unquote a sale. This is about building a relationship with a client that's going to last over their lifetime. And that's something that we believe there's a lot more that advisors can do, but they need to be equipped with those tools. And that's really the reason why we've kind of created the Freedom Advisor Crusade. We believe at E3 Marketing, we can be advocates for the entrepreneurial-minded financial professional and help them in ways such as this. So I'll stop talking and let Mark talk.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, if I could just build on that real quick. So unfortunately, when I got into this business 30 some years ago, I started noticing that financial people are obviously, we're all going to be asked questions, whether it's the tax person, the real estate agent, the mortgage loan officer, the insurance person. We're going to be asked questions, and then we hope, there's a lot of well-meaning financial people that are then hopeful that they're giving good answers. But if you really think about it, when someone asks a question, the answer really depends on that person's financial picture. And so because we've been doing this for so long, we just noticed that a simple example, a person might go ask their tax preparer, hey, how can I save less taxes? Well, first of all, the tax preparer doesn't know if they ask the question, how can I save less taxes this year? Or how can I save less taxes in my lifetime? Because those are two separate questions.
Pay or save?
Excuse me. How can I save more taxes in this year? Or are they saying, how can I save more taxes over my lifetime? Which question's being asked? So that's one thing. But even in order to really help answer that question, the tax person or the investment person, they really need to understand, as John said, the full financial picture. And unfortunately, that probably isn't done very often. When a mortgage person is helping a client, if they don't understand the whole picture, they really can't be a mortgage strategist. They're more of just a mortgage order taker. They're more just, well, we can show you how to pay the home off quicker, or we can show you how to get a lower interest rate. But if those strategies are causing those folks to if their opportunity costs and their additional taxes are greater than the interest saved, that's not really helping the person. So the one point that we've been attempting to make for ourselves and anybody that we talk to is that if we could get more and more financial people to simply expand what they do a little bit, and by that it means that either they help their clients take a financial snapshot, a complete picture, or they have someone come on board with them. They get an alliance built with somebody who can come and do that. Okay? Well, when that happens, I promise you, the clients will really appreciate that. It'll help the client a lot. So expand what you're doing a little bit into taking financial pictures, complete pictures. It'll help the clients a lot. It will also make that mortgage person or that tax person or that investment person different from most others in their industry. And finally, it will multiply your revenue. So it's a phenomenal win-win-win system. And that's something that we will really spend some significant time discussing at the event.
So, Mark, you're alluding to mortgage brokers, those in the real estate field. So this effort, these events aren't necessarily solely confined to financial advisors.
Well, yeah, it depends on the definition of financial advisor, but you're right. It's really any financial professionals, and as John said a couple of times, we're really looking for that entrepreneurial financial professional, whether it's in any of those disciplines. We're looking for those folks to join this educational crusade, and it's anybody that is helping people with their money. When you or I go in and talk to a mortgage person, the question is, are we talking to just a mortgage order taker? Or are we talking to a mortgage strategist? Are we talking to a tax preparer or a tax strategist? We ask people, our relationships, and we ask prospective clients, who's your mortgage strategist? Who's your tax strategist? Who's your cash flow strategist? Well, when we put some definition around those three terms, most people say, well, we don't really have a mortgage strategist. We really don't have a tax strategist. We really don't have a cash flow strategist. And that's sort of sad.
In a second, I want to bring Jenny Dasher back on, and she can give us some website information and other forums to get more information about this effort. As we're heading toward the end of this particular program, John, I want to ask you, is there anything else that you'd want our listeners to be aware of as far as coming to the November event? I know, again, we had Todd Langford and Kim Butler in town last week and shared a lot of great information, and they'll join us in November. Anything else that you want to highlight about this effort in November?
Only, Tom, that I believe, just like anyone else listening, everybody's busy. Your schedule's full. It's always difficult when you're going out of town and you're going to go to a meeting and you're trying to figure out, okay, is this going to be worth my time? So the important thing that I want to just say to everybody listening is we value your time, we value our time, but we also believe that if someone makes the effort to attend our next Freedom Advisor event, we are constantly looking at ways to evolve and become an organization that is really advocating for the entrepreneurial financial professional. So if we can get those types of people to be present and those types of people to provide feedback on the events, we know that every time we do an event, it's going to add value because we're getting that constant feedback. So this third event is going to be based on the feedback we've gotten from the previous two. And as long as I believe, as we continue with that same process, it's going to be worth people's time. So I hope that we can see as many people as possible that are tuning into these teleseminars attending the events.
Sure. And before I go to Jenny, Mark,
Closing thoughts.
Tom, this country, we have serious challenges. I'm going to take us to maybe a little higher level now, this conversation. And we get that it's financial people, the first concern logically is going to be self-preservation. So we're respectful of that. And we want this crusade, we want to meet people where they are. We want to meet financial professionals where they are. But there's some significant problems in this country. In fact, I wanted to make a quick offer. There's a new book out, The Problem with Socialism by Thomas DiLorenzo. And if anyone will contact Jenny Dasher, who wants if someone wants a copy of this book, we'll send them a copy. But in the book, it talks about the fact that a recent survey says 43% of Americans have a favorable opinion of socialism. Another survey says that 69% of voters under age 30 expressed a willingness to vote for a socialist president. And to me, the definition of socialism is where we want the government to basically own everything. And if the American people are going to continue to store their money in places where they can't get to it, where someone else is controlling it, that's just going to add to the problem. So I'm 62 years old. I have 4 daughters, 5 grandchildren, and I think about what the future is going to look like for them. We're $20 trillion in debt, and as a country, and that's so huge. I don't know how to deal with that. Mm-hmm. But the one lifeline that I can see that we can all be throwing to the next generations is helping them begin building their own privatized pool of money, which, as Nelson Nash calls it, privatized banking system. Carlos and Bob call it. If we can help more and more people do that, then as opposed to having it flowing to commercial banks, or as opposed to having it flow to the government, then there's going to be millions and millions of tax-free dollars that our kids and our grandkids and their kids are going to be able to utilize, because as you'll hear people like Nelson talk about, the government and the banks are stealing our wealth. And the only way we're going to stop that, or the only way we're going to address that, is with an educational crusade by the right financial professionals. Here in St. Louis, we've set up some 800 privatized banking policies since the fall of '09, so in a 7-year period. It's our game plan because I personally attend, I'm in a 10 times group with Dan Sullivan, strategic coach. It's our game plan that over the next 6 years or less, we're going to add 8,000 of those. And so right now there's about $25 million of flowing into the insurance sector and not flowing to commercial banks. Well, we'd like to 10 times that number. We're also asking if people across the country would join us in this effort. If we can, and we've got some definite strategic things that we're planning to do, and we'll keep building on that. But if we could get, as we build towards this 10%, that will help us change public opinion, and public opinion can change monetary policy. Now, Tom, that's so huge. That's so big for our listeners to think about. But I just hope, I want everybody to know that's the underlying theme of this. This thing's bigger than any of us. So that's why I would say come to the event, learn more about what we're talking about, because there's never been anybody did anything really great by themselves. And we realize that, and we got to keep building this growing community who's going to work in a cooperative way.
Your passion is clear. Thanks for your comments there, and thanks for today. Also, so I do want to turn to Jenny right now and ask Jenny to give us some information as far as website, Facebook, and again, the event in St. Louis is November 15th, 16th, and 17th. Jenny, what else can you tell us?
So for those of you that are left, I know we ran over a little bit. Drew is going to post this website so you guys can check it out. It's new for those of you that have been around. You haven't seen any of this stuff. So it's www.freedomadvisorcrusade.com. On there, you will pretty much find all the dates for everything we're doing. We now have Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and Mark is so excited about all of those. You guys know he loves technology. So I think Drew's going to pull it up here, and if you don't get to see it all right here, just go ahead and check it out on your own. You can ask us questions on there. That'll go straight to me and or Drew. We'll get back to you. And also, if you don't see the message board and you do want a copy of that socialism book, get us your mailing address, please.
All right, so our next teleseminar is September 13th.
September 13th, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, and it's going to be with Mark and Tom. I'll be here, of course. Drew will be in the background. You don't get to meet him. He runs everything. We're going to talk about the mindset scorecard. So.
Okay, very good. Thanks, everyone, for taking the time to listen today. Again, as Jenny said, questions or interest in the book, reach out, and we will be there to help. All right, everyone, have a great day, and hopefully we'll see you on September 13th.